Did you know that there are two different creation stories in the Bible? What's more is they actually contradict each other. But only if you interpret the Bible literally, which you should not. If you don't, then you will find that the creation story in Genesis chapter 1 has something lovely and wonderful to teach us. And that is what we're talking about this week.
Kindred UMC live show features adults discussing adult topics, occasionally with adult language. It may not be suitable for young viewers. Please use discretion before watching.
Hello all, welcome once again to the pre-recorded live show, coming to you not live, but pre-recorded from my front room, aka Kindred Studio A. My name is Chris Hayden. I am the pastor of Kindred UMC.
Hi, I'm Courtney Young. I'm the lay delegate at Kindred UMC.
I'm Preston, and as Sammy Hagar says, it is 55 degrees outside. And I think it feels great.
It's a wonderful time of year. We are technically pre-Christmas, but we're recording for after Christmas. So I don't want any holiday cheer at all in this entire video. No holidays. But we are going to be kicking off a new... I've changed the background and everything.
Let's see if you remember.
We're kicking off... Excuse me, I just had a chip. I had one chip, and I'm burping already. We're kicking off a new series where we're going to be looking at the beginning, aka the book of Genesis. And where better to start in the book of Genesis than at the beginning? In fact, those are going to be some of the first words we read. Does anybody know what the first phrase is?
One.
The number one. It's two ones right in a row. Chapter 1 and verse 1. No, it's in the beginning. And so I don't know, maybe I'll call it that. Who knows? I'll figure out a title in post. Here we go. Genesis chapter 1. We're actually going to be reading chapter 1 and then into chapter 2, verse 4, because the Bible didn't do a good job of splitting up the text. They were a little dumb, and we figured it out later, and now we figured it out. Okay, here we go. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God said that the light was good. God saw that the light was good. And God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning on the first day. We're going to be talking about a little bit of like what people thought the world was, because this is another example of where the Bible lies to you.
Great.
So, and God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters," which is a weird and confusing statement. "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made a dome and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening and there was morning on the second day. So does anybody understand what that means? God splits the waters and creates a dome called sky to separate the waters above from the waters below.
Well, the water we can see and then the water we can't see until the rain's here. So it's got to be somewhere up there.
Yeah, so ancient people believed that there was literally, they called it the firmament, a dome. So like what they believed was there was water, because they looked down, and like when you get to the beach, you look down, there's water. And they looked up and it's like blue sky, and they're like, that must be water up there too. And so they believed that they were like in water, and that there was a firmament that protected the land from the water above. Now, where do you think that's rooted from? There's another story in Genesis that kind of relates to this.
I'm going to guess Noah.
Yeah, it's the flood story. So this book was written in about 500, 600 BCE. So like, there's a cockroach. It's getting cold. Jonah, get it. All right, we'll deal with that later.
Better not come near me or I'm going to scream.
Here, I think we can deal with it now.
Hiding.
Ew, 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 ew.
Cockroaches.
Oh yeah.
Ooh.
There he goes. He's nice and dead now.
Vomit. Disgusting.
He's nice and dead
He
now.
also probably laid eggs all over your house because when you smash cockroaches, they lay their eggs.
That's a baby one. When you smash them, we're going to have to edit all this out.
When you smash them, they lay eggs.
Why do you think they survived all these years?
Well, Jonah's going to eat them. They can't survive in Jonah. Right?
I don't know. Their eggs are minuscule.
Yeah, well, they're not. No.
Okay, anyway.
Okay, so here's the thing. Genesis was written in 500 or 600 BCE, somewhere around there. That's after Jerusalem, after King David, after the Noah story, after after all this stuff. It was actually during the exile period. So it's a younger text than we think it is. And what they believed was this firmament thing. And one of the theories about why people were so concerned with water and flood, because it's not just Israelite theology, it's also, there's the Baal cycle, like B-A''A'-L, that was a god that was worshipped in Mesopotamia. Like, all of them have to deal with water that is related to death, and that's because there was probably a global flood. There was probably a global flood that actually wiped people out. And so everyone was like, please don't let that dome fail. Like, because the water is just up there and we're all gonna die if it comes down. Like, so they have this like kind of preoccupation with water as a source of death. And so when God says separate the waters and put the dome, the sky, like it's literally, they think there's water up there and water down there. And so that's what parting the waters is in this particular. I mean, parting the waters with Moses later comes different. But, anyway, just a little bit of factual, little fun information for everybody. Okay, picking up back at verse 9. And God said, let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit and with the seed in it. And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, trees of every kind bearing fruit, with seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning on the third day. So you picking up a pattern here? And God said, let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night. Now, people think that's stars. It's not. It's the sun and the moon. The two lights that separate the earth, the day from the night, are the sun and the moon. And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, because that's how they tracked their calendar. It was literally the waning and waxing of the moon and where the sun was in the sky. So. Let them be for of the sky, and let I lost my place. Seasons, days, and years, and let them be lights in the dome of the sky, and to give light upon the earth. And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, the sun and the moon, and the stars. And they just throw in the stars because they're there too. God set them in the dome of the sky and to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning the fourth day. So it's kind of like a children's story. The theory about how and why this was written was that it was supposed to be a liturgical reading during worship. That it was something that you would, like, it's supposed to have a rhythm. It's supposed to have a poetry to it. And God said, verse 20, God said, let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky. So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters and the seas. Let the birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning on the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things and wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth and every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and the everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make humankind. The Hebrew Adam, when we get Adam and Eve. The word Adam is actually humankind, which we'll talk about next week. Let us create humankind in our image according to our likeness. That word likeness, it's selam in Hebrew. And it's used elsewhere in Scripture, but it doesn't mean this. It means something else. I mean, it means both. This is a good translation, but it's important to know that, and we'll get into that in a minute too. A likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish in the sea, and the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. Let them have dominion. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them. Male and female he created them. God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Don't worry, we're not going to talk about trans issues. This is not a condemnation about like gender binary stuff. Like, that's not the point of this. And anybody who says so can, I don't know, email me or text me or whatever. I'm like, so yeah, be fruitful and multiply. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree that with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food. And it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished the work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. Like, the English translation doesn't really pan out because like it's more poetic in Hebrew. This is almost like the chorus of the song, you know. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created, and that's ending at verse 4 of chapter 2 rather than the end of chapter 1 because they did it wrong. They did it bad. So, first of all, just initial reactions. What do you make of it? Is there any questions, any observations, anything like that?
No, I mean, I heard that story a million times growing up, so it's nothing new right now for me. Okay.
I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with it.
Yeah, probably the same. If I was going to say from like a new perspective as an adult, maybe, it's like colorfully worded.
Yeah.
Or not to say it's trying to be colorfully worded, but there's a...
Oh, it definitely is.
It feels like there's a sense there versus kind of just throwing it at the page and, you know, boring like text. It doesn't sound like text.
It's more like a poem, more like a children's story. It's supposed to be... It almost certainly originated around campfires rather than in a written form. So it's supposed to sound a certain way, you know, and you can hear that in some of the rhythmic parts of it, you know, and there was evening and there was morning on the first day, and there was evening and there was morning on the second day. You can hear the fun of the poetry in it, even though it's in a completely different language now. So let's talk about that. The selam. The Hebrew word that says, let's create humankind in our image. And the plural for that is confusing, but when God refers to God's self in let's and let us and we shall, that's just a grammatical thing. Don't read too much into that. It's just grammar. That's all it is. But that word image, in our likeness, in our image, everywhere else in Scripture, it's idols. It's idol worship. It's about destroying the images and the idols of other gods. It's almost always a negativism throughout the rest of the Old Testament. And here, what we have is God's idols on earth, because that's how people would worship. Because you can't worship an invisible thing. They were like, we want to have an idol, and God says it's one of the 10 Commandments. Don't make an idol of me. You can't control me. You can't have me. But we skip over the important part of that theology, which is you are God's idol. You are the thing that is the likeness and the idol and the image of God, and me too, and so is everyone else. So everyone you love, everyone you hate, everyone you've never met, these are the images and the idols of God. These are the ways that we know who God is, because humanity is created in the likeness of God. And so like that's a different important meaning, you know, than that's often skipped over. So this was written in 500, 600 BCE during the exile, which that's actually something I didn't know. I had never really come across that, but it's not like it was written when Israel was on the rise. It was written during a time when they had been kicked out of Jerusalem, conquered by Babylon. They had been deported. They were strangers in a foreign land. And all of that is related to faith in God, because if God's so good, then why did the Babylonians kill us so easily?
I was going to ask the dumb question. The same thing, yeah, the Babylonians too is big. During that time, there's way too many stories.
It's when a lot of scripture was written. A lot of the Old Testament was actually written during that exilic period, is what they call it.
So the question's why? Is it because when you're down and out, we should resort to stories and filling others with hope and faith that we're going to survive or we're going to live?
That's a pretty good interpretive take on it. So, like, imagine that you just gotten the absolute teeth kicked out of you. You have no reason to believe that God is good or strong or faithful, because the Babylonian gods obviously won. And what do the theologians, the priests and the people who are responsible for the actual morale of the people and their faith, well, how do they respond? They remind everybody that our God is the one who made everything. Like, I know it looks bad now. I know it looks bad now. Babylon has just absolutely defeated us, and it looks like God is not with us. But let me take you all the way back to in the beginning. Our God spoke everything into existence. like it looks bad now, but remember who we are and who God has and who God is. So I want to ask you, have you ever had a moment like that? Not obviously not conquered civilization wise, but like a moment of like defeat, discouragement, doubt, where your faith was being tried and tested, and where maybe it was hard to see God. Have you ever had a moment like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the one I am constantly like kind of going through, or not going through still, but like the one I'm working through is just like church trauma. And I use that word like specifically. It's not like some people will say like church hurt, but it's not church hurt. It's like actual trauma. And like some of my specific stuff verges on like abuse. And like that was really frustrating and rough and sad. And I think for me, like, I don't know, it's just been nice and refreshing to like be out of that. But then I definitely still have moments where like I'm reminded of, you know, when I see certain people from that past life or whatever, like doing things and like moving on in a certain direction that if I was still like a part of that, like I would have moved on in that same way.
I'm certainly not asking you to name names or anything like that, because I don't think that's a little gossipy, and we
Sure.
don't want to do that. But can you be a little more specific without kind of betraying somebody?
I try. Yeah. So like, just like traditional, like when you're in the church and, you know, you get married.
And also this is a disciple group thing. You're using a lot of you language.
Yeah.
Can you use I language?
Sure.
Can you tell I want you to tell your story.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a lot of people I know, like again, growing up in traditional church culture, you know, you get married young, you try to have kids, you like start families, you like go to Sunday service, and that's just not something that I'm like interested in. Like we got Matt and I got married young, but like I'm not at all in a place where I want children. Like, and it's like the example I'm specifically thinking of is it's crazy to think about how if I was very much still involved in that part of my life and with those people, there is a very real possibility with all of my specific self-minimization that I would have convinced myself like, oh, I need to start trying for kids, or oh, I have to have kids in order to be included and accepted. And like, I actually don't know that I want kids at all. And so like to be able to like look at that.
How real do you think how much of your acceptance in that, group or friendship circle or whatever, do you think would have been contingent upon you fulfilling those behaviors, like doing what was expected of you,
I mean, like in my brain, I would say probably 90% of it. They would probably say like 60 to 70%, but
still a lot.
Yeah, definitely still more than average. Definitely still more than average.
Yeah. I do. There's something about, modern American church culture stuff that has a lot of, we don't just want you to behave in order to love people. We want you to fit in, because when you don't fit in, it challenges everything I built my identity on. There's an extra edge going on there.
The full circle for me when you were talking was, I remember when I was a youth pastor and I preached on this passage, and the thing I came back to was that clip in The Lion King where
don't get me started on Lion King.
Yeah. I'll
cry right now.
Right. The remember who you are, my son. Remember who you are. That's what I would always preach on when I would talk about this passage. And
crazy weather we've been having.
Yeah.
I love that.
And like for me, it was like seeing that and thinking about that life I could have had and those friendships I could have had. Like when you were talking, it's like, remember who you are. And it's like cool to like think. I've it
it's hard to do, remembering, and it's also challenging because there is a very important part of Christian faith that matters a lot, which is also challenge who you are. Mm-hmm. Who you are needs to be challenged, needs to be confronted. Everyone has areas to grow, but when our loveliness is contingent upon that, it's a real problem.
Yes.
And that is a failing of the church.
A lot in traditional church cultures and circles.
It's one of the places we fail consistently, unfortunately. How about you, Preston?
Mine's rather quick. It was when I was becoming of age to think for myself, quote unquote. More or less, I can challenge adults without feeling squandered.
I'm not sure you're there yet.
Well, we could argue. But feeling I can hold my own finally, and not even with information, just having enough self-conscious to, hey, I'm a person too. Why am I being talked like? It's usually people not in my family. It's those that are just outside, or just see how I am on Sundays or how I am here or there, and even like school and stuff. Having the dismissive teachers. Wait, this isn't like you. You usually get A's. What's this D about? It can't be like you. You're gonna have to fix this. Just hearing that. I don't know. The dismissiveness ties into kind of your traditionalism with church, and having a firm grasp on where the boundary is between traditionalism being led by or misled by people, and then using that for reverence in a church and treating it with respect, and then just combining those together and making sure you're following not dancing down the aisle. Some will see that as like that's very disruptive.
That's a story that I've shared from other. Yeah. Go back. Go look in all of our profiles and like and subscribe while you're at it.
Or like any kids in a church, someone crying during a sermon.
Right.
Get that kid out of here. He's ruining everyone else's.
Yeah, dismissive is a good word for it.
Yeah, and I always go back to the Jesus having the sermon and the kids are around and they're like, "Would you shut the kids out? Get the kids out of here. We don't want it." And he's like, "What are you guys doing?" Actually, they're going to be with me while I teach you guys about how you should be more like this.
Yeah. I when I was a chaplain, I got the opportunity to go to a mosque that was they were in the middle of Ramadan actually, and we got to hear the sermon, and there was a kid, and the imam just like, come in, and literally did the Jesus move, like pulled, and then like sat the kid on his lap, and the kid like just kind of hung out with the kid, and everyone, it was delightful, it was lovely, like, but there is this kind of properness that we religious folk get a little bit scared of.
Yeah, and I also wanted to tag on that the term like faith-tested is not like, it's not always someone doesn't believe and is yelling at you about it and he's the enemy and I'm not type of test. There's also the I'm turning 16 and my faith is being tested because I now kind of want to have my own imagination about the story that's being told.
I think and feel differently than I used to, and it's different from other people. And rather than being celebrated, which is what God seems to do, it's condemned often.
Well, or in other words, tested by whoever else is around. Like, well, you're not acting like me.
Well, and I think good teachers, good pastors, good volunteers and leaders test it well. They your loveliness is not contingent upon you getting the answer right or something. For me, because I've been thinking about this, ever since I started reading up on this text, and that transition of understanding that this was written for people who had lost everything. I was going through the story of COVID and quarantine, like getting appointed here, and within the first year, less than a year after our appointment to restart and reinvent the church, a quarantine and a pandemic, and like trying to build a community when you can't meet face to face, and like and a lot of the momentum and energy that we had at the beginning that has just naturally, like, nobody's fault, it's just like that's what happens, you lose steam, and we haven't been able to build the things that like. And so it's like this, for me, as I was reading, I was like, I find myself going like, hey man, it's like, I thought you called me here. Like, like I thought, like, and I was very much identifying with that. Like, I thought you were my guy. and then just everything rolled over me, And so, we all have that. That is a part of life. God doesn't act the way we want God to act all the time. It doesn't give us what we want God to give us. And it really hit me, and I hope that it's an encouraging word for you. That's going to happen. It happens to all of us. And when it happens, remember that we are citizens of a kingdom. We are made in the likeness and the image. We are the physical representation of a God who created everything and called it good and called it lovely. And you are too, and so am I. And that God is still the creator of everything. And it might be really crappy right now, like I know a lot of people with all this economy stuff, and there's a lot of tech layoffs, and there's plenty of reason to be sad, and it's okay to be sad, but also take heart. There is still a God in heaven. There is still a God who loves you, and you are the bearer of that God's image. So may the Lord make you, man, it's been a week, hasn't it? May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.